Do we have any requests? Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is actually, I'm the surrogate for Francis Awerkamp on behalf.
I was afraid it was me.
Yeah, no, not the liberal Francis. Anyway, this is Francis Awerkamp on behalf of Holton Community Hospital. This would authorize Jackson County, Kansas, to raise a quarter-cent sales tax for the Holton Community Hospital.
Okay, do you have an RS number on that?
Peace, okay. RS 0222.
Wow, that was an early one.
Yeah.
Okay, committee, any questions? Seeing none without objection, the request is approved. Are there any further requests for bill introductions? Seeing none, I'll draw the committee's attention. I can't remember exactly what I've made you aware of and what we've just received recently, but we do have quite a few sets of minutes from the January 29th meeting all the way through February 17th. If you will take some time and read those, we will approve those tomorrow, but go ahead and spend a little bit of time reviewing those if you so choose. First item of business for today would be a hearing on House Bill 2377, and I'll turn to the reviser for an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2377 would amend how countywide retailer sales tax would be distributed under the general countywide retailer sales tax authority levied by counties. Currently under law, the countywide general authority is essentially divvied up according to a formula. Under the law, 1/2 of the revenue received gets apportioned among the county and each city located in such county. And currently the proportion used to calculate is the, quote, total tangible property tax levies made in such county in the preceding year for all funds of each such governmental unit bear to the total of all such levies made in the preceding year. So basically, this is the property tax levied, would be how it's currently proportioned. The change to the bill would then base the total assessed valuations used to calculate such counties and each city's ad valorem property taxes in the preceding year. So instead of it being the tax levies, it would be the total assessed valuations used to calculate the proportionality to determine how the revenue is distributed. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Okay, committee, any questions for the reviser? Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So would the net effect of this be to lower property taxes?
This really wouldn't have any effect on property taxes. This is how, when the sales taxes that get collected by just the general authority of the county, how they essentially get divvied back out between the county and the cities and townships between them.
Okay, so this is strictly a sales tax issue.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Adam, how would this affect, I mean, I assume that this would go into effect for all of the existing ones currently as well. If they've put this on the ballot, do we have a conflict of some of the existing policies, or does the ballot language probably just refer to the statute on how it was distributed? That might be a question for that bears some research.
I would have to look into that a little bit more, but I don't believe there would be an issue because it would probably refer to the funding formula under the statute. And so since you're amending that statute, but I would need to look into it a little bit further.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Representative Wolf.
So I don't know if I'm understanding this correctly or not, but right now it is based on how much property tax. So if you're in a higher property tax area, you're getting more, and now we're just going to do it on valuations instead?
It kind of goes into the formula. I mean, that might be one of the arguments you might hear later. I'm not sure like how, just how the formula, they distribute the funds back out. So instead of being based on the actual tax of levies, it'll be on the valuation of the property.
So how is that going to change the way it is now? Why do we want the change? What is the change asked for? Do we know why?
That's probably a question more for the proponents once
Okay.
they get up here.
All right, thank you.
But to kind of continue that questioning, the current formula in statute right now is not the taxes levied, it is the actual mill levies. Is that the way I read that?
I mean, the property tax levies,
Yeah, on line 15, it says the the portion that we're striking out is the proportion that the total tangible property tax levies made.
could you repeat the question?
So if we have a county that's at, let's say their property tax levy is 50 and the city is 25, that's their actual mill levy. Is that how it is broken down? Even if they would have, let's say they have budgets at the same amount? I'm seeing a head shaking back there, and so that might be a question the proponents can answer, but I just want to make sure we all understand exactly how it's being done now and what the proposed change is. Okay. So we've preloaded some questions for the proponents. Did we have a WebEx? Okay. Was there someone on WebEx with a question?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's John Alcala. So will that change, because I hear it all the time from the county and the city, oh, we're not getting enough, or some of the other places, we're not getting enough. Will that change the distribution amounts to each individual?
I mean, I believe empirically it would do a little bit. I don't, depending on how much would be dependent on the how it would impact in each area.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to Department of Revenue. If they want to comment on the fiscal note on this one, or did we?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Kathleen Smith with the Department of Revenue. House Bill 2377 would only affect local sales tax collections and would have no fiscal effect on state revenues or expenditures. I would, if the intent is to swap out the property tax levied for the assessed valuations, we might ask for some clarifying language in Section 1. A1, because I don't think that I'm not sure that it's doing exactly what maybe what the intent is. So we would try and mirror the language more or less what we had already in place, but with assessed valuations.
Okay, so we'll take that into consideration as we move forward on this. If we need further clarification, we'll certainly do that. Any questions for Kathleen? See none, thank you. We'll now open up our proponent section of testimony and welcome first to committee. Welcome back, Commissioner Jim Howell.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for having me back today. This was a bill that was introduced by a representative of your committee on behalf of Sedgwick County. It's on our legislative platform. I am testifying today on behalf of Sedgwick County, by the way. You do have testimony from our chairman, but I understand the technical side of this, so maybe that I wanted to be the one to actually speak to you this afternoon. So the genesis of this bill is we lowered our mill levy recently, a couple of years in a row, and we noticed an interesting thing. When you lower the mill levy, you also give up sales tax dollars, and that's the problem. The incentives are backwards. I would like to encourage municipalities to lower the mill levy, but we actually get a double hit. In fact, last I think 2 years altogether, we've lost about $700,000 in revenue from the sales tax funds that we would have had we not lowered the mill levy. So just to put this in perspective, we have about $140 million of sales tax revenue. We have 20 cities of Sedgwick County, and every one of them gets a share of that based on two parts of the formula. First part is population. We're not touching that in this bill. Sedgwick County only gets credit for the unincorporated part of Sedgwick County population. So Wichita gets most of that money because if you talk to some of the folks that represent Wichita, they'll tell you 85 or 80% of the people who live in Sedgwick County live in Wichita. So the vast majority of the population, half of this formula, goes to Wichita. Wichita consequently have $140 million in the 2025 budget. They estimated $87 million in revenue. So even though they don't have a local sales tax, and they could have one, they do have a countywide sales tax, and they get $87 million of $140 million. The second half of the formula is based on the tax levy. You mentioned the word mill levy a minute ago. Mill levy rate is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the tax levy. So I've got data I could share with you, but Sedgwick County's tax levy this last year was $186 million. And because we actually apportioned half the sales tax revenue based on the tax levy, we were able to get about 48.3% of that half of the sales tax revenue. The remaining 52% went to other cities. And again, based on their tax levy, others, how many dollars do they tax from the people, they would get a portion of the sales tax. So the total taxes for all 20 cities plus the county together was $386 million property taxes that were levied. So you divide that out, so every city has a tax levy, and they get a portion of that half the sales tax revenue based on their relevant tax levy. What we're proposing today is remove, and I actually would tell you this, our sales tax has been in place since 1985. And I actually think this state law has been in place a very long time. I actually argue until we start reducing the mill levy, this whole issue is kind of hidden. But as we're trying to lower the mill levy, by the way, we're looking at about a 7.5% assessed value growth in Sedgwick County in this coming budget cycle. I certainly hope we lower the mill levy. I hope every city lowers their mill levy. But until you start lowering the mill levy, you may not realize what's going on here. And the reality is, I think that this law was set up wrong in the first place. We ought to fix it. If you shift it to assessed value for your taxing jurisdiction, it doesn't significantly change most of our cities. There's a couple of them that have a change somewhat to make this correction in the state law. But generally speaking, most of the cities still get revenue from the sales tax formula. And it doesn't drastically change. Now, I know some of them are going to say it's a huge hit to them. We're talking about, let me give you an example. And I love Derby. I live in the city of Derby. Right now, they get $6.127 million from the countywide $140 million sales tax revenue. They're going to look at it maybe $100,000, $150,000 worth of lost revenue. They do also have a city sales tax of 1%. And by the way, this does not affect cities at all. And if they have cities have a citywide sales tax, this has nothing to do with that. It's just countywide sales taxes. So that, Mr. Chairman, I think this is the right thing to do. It puts the incentives right where they belong. And I think it actually makes a correction. And by the way, you say, well, if the city of Derby does lose revenue and the county gains revenue, isn't that good for the county and bad for the cities? There are a couple of other cities that do benefit from this, by the way. So 18 cities would see a reduction in revenue. 2 of them would see an increase in revenue. But let me make another point here. Every single person who benefits from this in the county, they all live in Sedgwick County, even if they live in the city of Derby. So I would argue that, again, money, we're not just wasting dollars, we're providing services. This doesn't hurt anybody in Sedgwick County in that regard, because Sedgwick County is providing services to every resident of our county. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions, but I urge the committee to please pass a correction in state law. I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Yeah, committee, we'll go ahead and take questions at the moment. Representative Francis first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for bringing this before us. I'm just concerned mainly about unintended consequences and communities that are already out there. And again, I don't know if this county has a countywide sales tax, but I think about the extreme example of, what's the county that Wolf Creek's in? Coffee County. You know, where you've got this massive infrastructure out in the county. You've got very few citizens out in the county. And then this warps what has traditionally been used, because I know that the county actual amount of tax that they levy is less because of Wolf Creek. And I think about my own community where we've got a helium plant, We've got a ethanol plant that really kind of skews, we have really huge oil and gas reserves, or at least we used to 30 years ago, that really skew that valuation approach. And it may not be as extreme in my part of the state now because of the declining oil and gas. But I am concerned about the unintended consequences.
And Chairman, I don't know how every single city is going to fare on this proposal, but I would argue that every municipality should be trying to grow the municipality, and as assessed value grows, because the cities are doing well, they deserve a greater share of the sales tax dollars to offset property taxes. I actually have a resolution from 1985 when the county pushed out the 1% sales taxes, and the purpose of this actually was property tax relief, property tax replacement, if you will. And if you have incentives backwards, that you get a benefit from increasing your mill levy, increasing your tax levy, that's not what this is supposed to do. It's exactly the opposite. I think it's actually a mistake in Kansas law. There may be some places out there that might have some kind of a weird thing where they've got a large amount of assessed value for something like a nuclear power plant. I don't know how that works in that particular county, but I would think for most cities and most counties across the state, this is a better way to do this.
Representative Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question is similar to Representative Francis, but I'm thinking about nonprofits that don't pay property taxes. If you have a large nonprofit property that is currently not paying property taxes and you change to a valuation scheme, then they're going to suddenly enter into the calculation as a factor in calculating the taxes. And I was just wondering, is there does the bill omit nonprofit entities from the new method, or are they part of the new method where they weren't in the old method? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that does bring up a good point. Right now, every county clerk, every county does have a total assessed value for their county. And I don't know if that includes abated property. That is a good question. It's a technical question. I don't have the answer to that, but I would say that as long as the legislature is contemplating assessment caps, that I would argue that if this should be on a non-capped or non-corrected assessment for their jurisdiction. So that is an interesting point. But to the extent we already have data in each county for the total assessed value, I don't know that includes or does or does not include the abated property.
Yeah, research confirmed that if it specifies assessed valuation, so that does exclude any of those exempt properties that would be like a nonprofit or any of the other, probably your schools, churches, things like that that are considered exempt property would not be included in that total.
I would think that's appropriate, by the way. I think that's the way it should be done, because I don't want a city to provide an abatement and get a benefit from counting them on this calculation. So I think that's the right way to handle that. I'm glad it's that way.
Representative Howerton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was looking at the proponents. There's no opponents listed to this bill, so I'm just curious. I don't think cities may have had enough time to weigh in on this bill. I know Derby reached out to me since you mentioned Derby, and they have some concerns, and I think maybe some other people would as well. So just because you mentioned Derby did lower their mill rate the last 4 years consistently, and their math is not matching your math. So I'm not sure what the difference is, but just think we should really consider this and just make sure, like Representative Francis said, there's no unintended consequences. So.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, this was entered in the system quite a long time ago, and every city's had the opportunity to engage just like the county is. They also have lobbyists that are here full-time. I don't really know why they would not be able to speak to the bill. But.
Well, and to your point, Representative Howerton, I think before we work this bill, it would be wise to see if research could put together some information to see how the different counties and cities would be impacted. On its face, I tend to agree with the proponent. Maybe this is the way it should have been, but we have to also be cognizant of the impact of transitioning from one to the other. There could be some situations that we don't understand fully. But any further questions for this proponent? Or Representative Howerton, were you finished? Okay. Representative Corbett?
Mr. Howell, so if this would happen to go through, can you kind of just, do you think this will be a great savings for taxpayers in the state of Kansas? Will they save any money at all? Or will this be the old shell game?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think the answer is that, again, some cities are going to see an increase in revenue. Some county will see an increase in revenue. We believe this is fair. We believe it's the right thing to do. But the cities are going to see a decrease in revenue. Again, I will never argue we're going to just spend the money if you've got it, or they should raise taxes if you don't have it. I think at the end of the day, we're all called to be conservative. I don't know that the taxpayers are going to necessarily notice much difference, other than cities and counties will have to respond with potentially adjustments in their budgets to manage to reduce property taxes if they've got more revenue coming in, or to deal with the loss in revenue, and how they manage that would be cuts in services or prioritizing within their own budgets. I mean, it's impossible to really characterize the question as being good or bad for every taxpayer or for every city or county.
And this doesn't have to, the savings, or if there is any savings, won't necessarily be earmarked for property tax, will it?
And again, let me just argue that the sales tax revenue is a zero-sum game of dollars. If the county does receive a few percent more, and we believe it's fair, that money is going to be coming from the cities that would have otherwise gotten that money. So again, we've lowered our mill levy. We've given out $700,000 recently. Where did that money go? Well, we had a 0.5% increase in sales tax revenue this last year. So the 0.5% increase went to the cities, and the $700,000 went to the cities. They've actually benefited because we lowered our mill levy. We lost mill levy revenue. We also lost sales tax revenue. My point is, the sales tax revenue is a zero-sum game of dollars. If we take in less, someone else is going to take in more, because we're taking that 100% pie and dividing it up differently based on moving those lines around slightly. So there is no ultimate taxpayer savings, other than the fact that cities and counties might have to reflect those revenue changes in their budget however they want to prioritize.
Further questions, committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Chairman, I'll stay in the audience for additional questions should they come up. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Our next conferee is Mike Taylor with the Kansas County Commissioners Association.
Thank you. Good afternoon, committee. I'm here representing the Kansas County Commissioners Association. That is 360 plus elected officials in all 105 counties, Republicans, Democrats, rural, urban, so we're a very diverse group, all serving their local communities. We're here to support this bill because we think this change would be beneficial. Counties, despite what some of you might think, counties are always looking for ways that we can lower property tax, relieve the burden of the property tax. Sales taxes are a good way to do that for most counties, and we think that changing this distribution formula will help. As Commissioner Howell said, if you lower the mill levy on property tax, you end up being punished by losing sales tax revenues, and the goal is to try to invert that and fix that so that you can lower the mill levy without being punished for it. I'll give one example, and it's my home county. Wyandotte County, for the first time ever, collected more sales tax last year than we did property tax. And that's largely because of the tourism area that's there. But that's been hugely beneficial, and it allowed the commission in Wyandotte County to stay revenue neutral and, in fact, lower the mill levy some. So sales tax is very beneficial to counties, and we think that this tweak in the formula will actually help give counties the ability to be able to lower property taxes without being punished financially for it on the sales tax side. Thank you.
Committee, any questions? Seeing none, our next actually, it looks like that is written only testimony from Kansas Association of Counties. Is there anyone else wishing to testify as a proponent? Seeing none, are there any neutral or opposing testimonies? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the hearing on House Bill 2377. We'll have to return to requests for bill introductions. I had one that I forgot myself, but this is number 25 RS 0822, so it's a little bit little bit older than yours was, but not much. This is a new property tax relief plan that is going to be reinstituting a demand transfer fund for $60 million for local governments. It will be incentive-based to receive your distribution based on CPI and different growth factors. And there will also be implementation of a protest petition for the voters to come in and stop property tax increases. But any questions? Seeing none, that request will be approved. 60, yes. Any other business for the good of the committee? Seeing none, read your minutes and we'll approve those tomorrow. We are adjourned.